as we have noted, no sitting president has dropped out of a race so late in the election cycle and is now just less than a month before the Democratic convention in Chicago. I want to bring in David Becker, our election law expert. And David, let's talk about what happens now. What could we see at this convention?
Well, we should first recognize, Nora, that as of today and as of yesterday, the Democrats had no official nominee. The way the process works is that during the primaries, delegates are earned by the candidates. President Biden won an overwhelming majority. Those people, of course, knew that President Biden was 81. They knew that Kamala Harris was the vice president at the time. And the nominee was not official by any means until the delegates vote. And there was some question as to whether or not that would happen early August or perhaps during the convention. In either case, that delegate selection of the nominee would have made it official, and only then does the Democratic Party's nominee go on to any particular state's ballot. That was also true for, of course, the Republican Party up until last week when former President Trump officially received the nomination. As we currently stand now, there is no state in the country that, so long as the Democrats select their nominee and the vice presidential running mate by that point in time, the second to last week in August, there is no legal or practical issue with that ticket appearing on the ballot in any state. So what we'll see over the course of the next few weeks, of course, is there might be some political wrangling here and there to see where that ticket comes out. But there will be nominees selected at some point in August by the Democratic Party, and they will appear on the ballot in every one of those 50 states.
Ed O'Keefe has a question.
I just want you to underscore what you just said there, David. You, in your view, in your studied view of election law, there is no reason to believe any legal challenge could come to the Democratic ticket because they're not going to miss any deadlines that would put them on the ballot?
That's exactly what I'm saying, and I think I want everyone to think about this a little more clearly. I expect there might be some frivolous claims brought, but what those claims would essentially be saying is that some other party would be claiming that they can force the Democratic Party to pick someone as their nominee that has decided not to serve as the nominee or president. There's no legal basis for this whatsoever. And in fact, if this were applied in any particular states, I want to hearken back to the Colorado disqualification case earlier this year, where the Trump campaign and Donald Trump argued that you could not give a state the power to remove a candidate from the ballot because that would create this patchwork of laws and affect the outcome. And all 9 justices agreed with that. They said it was not appropriate for a single state to act in such a way. In that case, it was with regard to the 14th Amendment and the possible insurrection that Donald Trump had incited. But it would be a real problem to allow any state to affect the outcome of the election by refusing to put a duly nominated candidate on the ballot.
But you agree that there's a good chance there might be someone out there or some entity out there that tries to challenge the legality of them changing their ticket this late, right?
I mean, we've certainly heard from some groups and individuals that have made that claim in advance, and we've certainly seen that there is no bar to people apparently being willing to bring frivolous litigation. However, I am about as close as I can be 100% confident that that litigation will be quickly disposed of, that there is a very strong legal, ethical value in allowing the parties under the United States Constitution to select their nominees by whatever process they have. This is the process the Democratic Party has laid out. If a presumptive nominee is unable or is unwilling to serve as a candidate, and that happens before the convention, the delegates can then select their nominee, but there is no nominee right now, and there was no nominee yesterday, and there won't be a nominee until the delegates vote, presumably in August.
David Becker, our election law expert, always great to have you. Thank you so much.